Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. Hey listeners, I just wanted to provide a quick disclaimer here, as during the editing process, I noticed that there are some crackling and audio issues with a few of my recordings. Unfortunately, this has happened on several different episodes that I did not realize until after the fact, so it is something that I have now rectified once I noticed the issues, but you may hear over the next few episodes some unfortunate audio quality issues, especially from my side of the microphone. So deepest apologies for that. I really appreciate you sticking with me. Here is to imperfect action and better quality moving forward. My conversation this week is with Derek Pollard, who founded Constellar Creative and developed the P.O.E.T, or P.O.E.T, content framework to help financial advisors transform their marketing from suitsy expertise to genuine personal engagement, combining proven storytelling techniques and research-based marketing strategies. Derek is known for creating content that elevates advisors' messaging from meh to oh my. Now, Derek and I initially connected on LinkedIn, and we were both delighted to discover that we share a similar background. We both spent years teaching in university English departments before transitioning into financial services marketing, and it was really this shared experience of engaging skeptical college students and getting them excited about a subject they often dreaded, which was writing, that gives both Derek and I a unique perspective on marketing for financial advisors. Now, in this conversation, Derek and I are discussing how the skills we developed in the classroom translate really well to helping financial advisors connect with their prospects. We talk about addressing skepticism head-on, the power of authenticity in advisor branding beyond just using that word as a buzzword, and how to create manageable content strategies that don't overwhelm you. Derek also shares his innovative P.O.E.T framework for content creation that can help make marketing feel less like a chore and more like a natural extension of who you are as an advisor. I am really excited for you to hear Derek's fresh take on financial marketing, especially if you've been struggling to find your authentic voice in your posts, or if you've been feeling overwhelmed by all the content you feel like you should be creating. His approach offers a practical way forward that doesn't require you to be someone that you're not. So without further ado, let's dive in. I'm so excited to have Derek on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. Derek, how are you today?
I'm doing really well, and I'm thrilled to be here. I know this is a sort of out loud version of the conversation that we've been having for a number of weeks now. So I'm really excited to be able to share some of the insights and address some of the topics that you and I have been talking about.
I'm excited too, Derek. You know, as you said, you and I think, made our first face-to-face connection a few weeks ago, and we just really hit it off. I mean, we have so much in common in terms of our backgrounds and things like that. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. If you could tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and some of that background story and what it is that you do now, I think that would be a great place to start.
Cool. Well, like you, Hillary, I am a recovering academic. Spent the bulk of my career in higher education. I was a college English professor. And one of the most interesting things is you kind of stay in that career because of the way you're professionalized. And it can often be challenging to envision doing what you're doing in other contexts. And that was certainly the case for me. The pandemic hit, and circumstances changed for so many of us. And I had the opportunity to take the step that I had been contemplating for a number of years, and that was to move out of academia into the world of marketing. Now, again, when you're in academia, you're not really thinking along these lines, but the truth of the matter is, as I was contemplating how all of this was going to fit together for me, how I was going to make this pivot, it suddenly dawned on me. For 20 years, I'd basically been on the hardest sales floor you could ever imagine, the college English classroom. And what that means is, for those of you who are unfamiliar, every 4 months or so, I would be faced with the challenge of having to walk into rooms, plural, full of complete strangers and get them to buy in to either an 8 week or a 15-week endeavor that most of them dreaded or were deeply, deeply resistant to. I had
Yeah.
about 30 minutes to accomplish that task. And based on student achievement and retention rates, I managed to put together a pretty good pitch deck.
Mm,
Again, you don't think of it that way, but really being able to do the very things that we're doing in advisor marketing, and just to be able to replicate that, to build that level of comfort and rapport, connect with people, particularly skeptics, and find ways to flip a script that has become so central to their way of thinking, allow them to explore and begin to enjoy something that they've been really, really dreading.
yeah.
Not only is it incredibly rewarding, but goodness gracious, does that skill set ever transfer over? Same thing we're doing in advisor marketing.
Oh, I could not agree more, Derek. I remember, my first year, maybe 2 years of teaching these college freshmen. I had not honed that skill yet, and I had really tough semesters those
Yeah.
first couple of years. And then I remember my very first year teaching full time after I had graduated from, my master's program, having that mindset shift and really using those first 30 minutes really
Yeah.
intentionally with all of my classes and just having the best year after
Yeah.
that, where students were engaged, they were excited to come to this class that they were resistant to. And it really just does make all the difference. I think that you're absolutely right. It translates so well into marketing and being able to speak to the skeptics and get them to buy in. So I really
Eh,
appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, and that's exactly it. You're not getting the buys if you're not creating the buy-in.
Right.
And the one of the keys to being able to do that is being able to speak directly. This you said this very well. It's not like I showed up on day one and I had this all figured out. It took me a while,
Mm,
right? I found that it was something that one needed to experience because you had so many different and diverse audiences that you were
mm.
speaking to. But the minute I realized that the way to accomplish this was to say the thing that everyone was thinking,
Yep.
it changed everything. The
Yep.
minute that I acknowledged that most of the people in that room, whether it was 5 students, 10, 15, I mean, I taught some large seminar courses, so 60, 75 students. The minute I said to them, look, most of you don't want to be here.
Uh-huh.
And I understand that. And I'm really curious to know why. In
Mm.
fact, that became my opening writing assignment for students. And brief, I didn't want to overwhelm them,
Yep.
but give me a paragraph or two about why you're here. And if why you're here is you have to be, I need to know that because that's going to allow me to help you. The
Yep.
minute you start speaking to your prospect, the minute you start acknowledging their skepticism and inviting them into a dialogue, you're doing something really extraordinary with your marketing.
Mm. Well, I'm hesitant to go here because there's still some questions I want to ask you about what it is that you're doing now, but I'd love to hear you just speak really quickly to, what are some ways that that might show up in advisor marketing? What are some ways that advisors might bring that into their practice and their marketing and things like that?
Well, again, one of the things that advisors I think would do well to talk to, particularly when we're talking about younger clientele, which is really important considering the wealth transfer we have coming up. I think acknowledging that financial services isn't just for rich people.
Mm,
Financial advisors are not always just in it for the money, right? There's a lot of opportunity to address some of the skepticism. There's a lot of opportunity to do some of that initial education as well. Now, the sooner we're able to do that, the better. financial literacy courses, whether we're talking about in a school curriculum, K through 12, whether we're talking at home. The sooner people become financially literate, the more empowered they are. I think that's a wonderful conversation for advisors to be having, particularly as they're thinking about connecting with younger clientele. So being able to address some of those pressing concerns and just again being able to say the thing that most people who don't know what financial advisors do or have a skewed vision of what they do, best thing to do is say, hey, look, here's what I actually do, and these are the things that aren't happening, right? And I think that that's a wonderful, wonderful conversation to have. And also, I know it's an industry that has really thrived around a sort of standard, right? And I mean, even to the point of how people are presenting themselves. When you're able to bring more personability, you're able to create more rapport, you're able to speak more directly, and you're letting people know, again, people who may have a sort of blanket idea or a stereotypical idea, I'm not boring, right?
Right.
And that's a wonderful way to lead. Here's me being me. Here's the person you're going to be working with. For me, I think one of the sort of transformational realizations for advisors in terms of their marketing, and one of the hurdles that quite often they have to overcome, is just recognizing they're absolutely brilliant when they're talking to clients. They're brilliant, whether it's in person, whether it's virtually. They're comfortable, they're confident. All your marketing is just allowing your prospects to experience what your clients already know. And the more comfortable and confident you are, and I think the sooner you understand that that's really what you're doing, it's really just a sort of a public facing client call. You're going to wind up attracting your ideal client much, much quicker than you would otherwise.
Right. I could not agree more. I think the days of the, advisor who shows up to meetings, whether now it's virtual or in person, showing up to meetings in a suit and tie, I think those days are far beyond us.
Yep.
And I don't know that, especially the younger generations, like you said, I don't know if they really know that yet. And so I think you're absolutely right in that however you're showing up to client meetings, that's how you need to show up in your marketing. How do you make your clients feel comfortable? And that's going to help you know how to make your prospects and your audience feel comfortable with you as well. Now, before we get further into this, Derek, I'd love to just ask you really quickly, in what kind of capacities do you work with advisors? What do you help advisors with when you work with them as a finance marketer?
Mm-hmm. Short answer is pretty much everything.
Uh-huh.
The more detailed answer, however, content strategy, content implementation. So many of the calls that I wind up having, particularly those initial calls with advisors, have to do with really going through the process of uncovering what it is they need help with and prioritizing that. So a lot of it is strategic. We kind of default to words like consultation, coaching. These are absolutely aspects of what we do. They're really kind of folded in with content marketing. I don't know as we can really do on the implementation side what we need to do if we're not thinking in terms of how does this connect to a broader long-term strategy. But so much of the work that I wind up doing, particularly in the initial phases, is just auditing content, having those conversations. If there's a brand guide in place for an advisor, we're consulting that. If there isn't, we're thinking about, or we're actioning, we're developing one together, just so that there is the consistency. That's one of those buzzwords we hear all the time, right? You have to be consistent with your marketing. That doesn't just mean you're posting every Tuesday at 10 a.m. on LinkedIn. What it really means, and really means in terms of greatest impact, is your messaging is consistent everywhere you are showing up for your ideal client. So your website is connecting with your social media presence. You're moving traffic between the two. They're both optimized so that they're showing up on search engine results pages high up in the rankings. your email is drawing on content, again, moving people to say your blog or your vlog, right? More videos, advisors. You're utilizing and moving people between the pillars of your marketing content. Doesn't mean you've got to do all of that at once. That's another one of the aspects of the work that I do quite a bit with advisors, is mapping out what that content implementation is going to look like. But I want to make sure that those impediments that keep advisors from doing the thing, from taking that next step in terms of reaching the people they know they can help, I want to make sure that we remove those barriers, and we do it incrementally, right? This is not going to be, hey, we're going to completely redesign your entire marketing strategy and we're going to do that in the next 24 hours.
Right.
It's what is the long-term strategy? What are the goals? What are the objectives? Who's your ideal client, right? If we want to make sure that they've been identified, that is something that you are revising and revisiting as your business evolves. But we want to make sure that the implementation matches the strategy, and we're doing that incrementally so that advisors experience the rewards of a website that says what they want it to say, need it to say, and is attracting engagement and attention. Then again, this is going to be different for every advisor, but then optimizing the LinkedIn profile, then making sure that the email cadence is matching the expectations of their. If you're trying to do everything at once, you're going to experience the frustration that many of you know. And I just want to make sure that we alleviate that, because I know what that frustration is like, and I know how paralyzing it can be. So I want to make sure that we alleviate that, and that advisors are comfortable and confident with their marketing.
I love that. That's something that I always tell my clients too, is, when we talk about strategy, we can talk about all these different pieces that are important to have: the social presence, maybe your long form content, your emails, things like that. But just starting with one is the way to go, right? I always tell my clients, for a year or two, I was only doing LinkedIn, right? I didn't have an email list for the first year or two in my business. I didn't have the podcast, I would sporadically blog. No one does it perfectly. The point is to just keep moving forward and keep showing up where you can and building in the other pieces when you can. And the other thing that I want to point out that you mentioned is that you want to make sure that there's alignment and consistency between all the platforms that you're posting on, right? What you're saying on LinkedIn should not be radically different than what's on your website. And what you're saying on your website should not be any different than what you're saying in your emails, which I think also can be a little bit of a relief for a lot of advisors who are worried about, how am I going to come up with all of these content ideas, right? And you don't really have to come up with all of these content ideas. You just have to figure out what your core philosophies and messaging are, and then talk about them in different platforms, right?
Yeah. Well, and again, how brilliantly said is that, and what a comfort. I mean, honestly, that to me is really important, because I think there's so much resistance to really embracing marketing in financial services because of the frustrations that advisors have experienced or are experiencing, feeling like, oh, great, there's this new thing now that I've got to be done. Now I've got to be doing videos. I was just starting to think about making sure my email, marketing was, and now I've got this other thing. And then there's this other thing over here and this other thing over here. Again, it can really start to feel overwhelming quickly. And so that is also one of the reasons. I mean, obviously, you're listening to two people who do this for a living. But this isn't just a plug for the two of us. It really is. Find the marketing partner that you relate to, who speaks your language and understands and listens, leads by listening, and how they develop content for you, so that your ideal client is who you're speaking to. But find the person that you relate to, you feel comfortable with, and allow them to help you take all of this anxiety, frustration, all of these obstacles off your plate. And again, the sooner you do that, the better, even if it is in a fractional capacity. Even if you're like, look, I love creating content for LinkedIn, I'm never going to interfere with an advisor who loves creating content,
Right.
right?
Right.
And in fact, I often will revise a content strategy to reflect that.
Yep.
Maybe somebody really loves tweaking their website. They're really, really active, and it's not just a quarterly update to ensure that you're continuing to rank well in SERP results, but you love doing it. You love creating a couple of blog posts every month. I think that, again, then let's have you concentrate on doing that. And Hillary, to your point earlier, and again, this is such an important point. You're not starting from scratch every time you take on a new content pillar. In
Right.
fact, again, if we're being intentional about creating content, what we're doing is we're creating a strategy for you whereby you can create that one piece of long form content. Again, I'm going to suggest that probably wants to be a video. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be. Maybe it is an article that you are initially posting on LinkedIn or
Right.
as a blog article on your website. If you're creating content, and even long form, even if it's 1,200 words, right? And that really is at the lower envelope in terms of a search engine prioritizing
Right.
that in terms of SEO for your rankings.
Right.
Even if it's a 1,200 word blog article, if you think about it in this way, you can draw from that. You could reverse engineer it. You could then create 4, so let's say 60-second video shorts based on the content you've already created. You're covering the topics or the larger topic, you're breaking it down. Why not shoot a 60-second video using that as a sort of loose script?
Yep.
Or vice versa, shoot the 2-minute video,
Mm-hmm.
create the transcript for yourself, create the talking points. You've got a series of blog articles that you can then develop. You've
Right.
got social media content that you can develop. You're repurposing the content you've already created. That can either be 1 2-minute video you make each month. It could be 1 blog article you write, and you've got 30 to 60 days worth of content easily
Right.
based on that one piece of long form content that you've created. So again, if you're starting to think strategically, it can be overwhelming. You're like, okay, I've got to shoot a 2-minute video. I've got to shoot 4 60-second videos. I've got
Right.
to post 3 to 5 times on LinkedIn in order to be able to trigger the algorithm. I need to be able to make sure that I have at least 2 blog articles on my website for SEO purposes. I don't blame advisors for feeling like this is just too much all at once.
Right.
But again, there are ways, depending on your particular priorities, depending on where your ideal client is, there are ways to be able to do this that really streamline that process. And
Right.
again, we're not talking about canned content here. We're not talking about, hey, here's a template, just fill in a few blanks. It's like an advertising Mad Lib,
Right.
right? It's, hey, let's create an original piece of content that you've determined your ideal client wants somebody to explain to them,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can repurpose that across your marketing channels, right?
Right. There's so many opportunities, and what I love about this too is there's two big benefits here. It saves time, and it means that you're being consistent, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, which is so important. You don't have to talk about 50 things
Yeah.
in a single month. You don't have to talk about 50 things at all, right? Maybe you have 3 core things or 5 core things,
Yeah.
and then you can repurpose it all. So I love that. Now, I want to circle back to
Mm-hmm.
when you were talking about consistency, you uh, mentioned it's kind of a buzzword right now, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think another one of those buzzwords that you and I have talked about, we were talking about it prior to hitting the record button this morning, uh, is authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me, just because authenticity is a buzzword, it doesn't make it any less important, right? I
Yeah.
know that you and I both really believe that authenticity is well, I won't speak for you, but I really believe that authenticity is one of the only ways to stand out as an
Mm-hmm.
advisor in the crowded market,
Yeah.
in addition to having a niche and things like that. And so bringing parts of your personality into your brand and into your marketing is just it's a non-negotiable these
Yeah.
days. And so I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that and what you believe about authenticity.
I, what she said, advisors. It honestly, you have absolutely hit the nail on the head in terms of the importance, and also starting to unpack this sort of it's like holistic financial advice, right? Advisors know what that means,
Mm,
but we're at a point now where that word holistic has become sort of abstract. It's almost lost its meaning because we've used it so much. I think
mm,
authenticity is probably headed in that direction if we're not already there with it. What we're
mhm,
really talking about here is just who are you, right? The landscape has shifted, and I want to stress that or emphasize that. I'm using the past tense. The landscape has shifted, right? In that, your financial acumen as an advisor, your expertise, those are the table stakes at this point.
mm,
And this is increasingly true. Again, Hillary, you've said this so incredibly well. This is increasingly true in our AI era.
mm,
The human touch and the attention you bring to the quote unquote little things, both in your approach to advising and in how you're talking about that in your marketing, those are what are going to differentiate you. Your clients, your prospects, they're still expecting you to be an expert in terms of the financial side of the equation, right? And they are looking for that. I don't want to pretend otherwise. It's not like they're just looking for somebody, a really cool person to hang out with, and
right.
they'll get some financial advice. They're coming to you because they themselves feel overwhelmed,
Mm,
frustrated. They have questions. Many of them are ashamed or embarrassed about the fact that they're not financially literate, right? Again, it's one of the extraordinary gifts advisors bring to their clients. And this is one of the reasons that I just am so passionate about and feel so strongly about this industry. Advisors help people transform their lives. They do
mm,
extraordinary work. And those are the stories that advisors want to lean into when they're thinking about ways to connect with the people they know they can help.
mm,
That's what authenticity is. Who are you? The person behind the expertise is what really is going to differentiate you in that sea of sameness that we're always talking about. And
mhm.
it can be something very, very small. Before we started recording, you had remarked on Gumby and Pokey in the background, right? Just those little touches of personality.
Mhm.
It can be a talking point. I mean, I'm certainly old enough now where that's a relevant pop culture reference. There are a lot of
Yeah.
people would probably be like, "What's that green thing in the background?" Right? What
Well,
a great.
I
Go ahead.
I couldn't even remember his name, right?
Yeah,
I recognized him, but I had to ask you, what is his name?
and this is one of those things, again, because so much of the work that I do in terms of content marketing is at a granular level, bringing together that close, careful attention really at the micro level, along with the macro strategy. Um, the way we talk about things is so important, and these are invitations that you're creating for your prospects to engage, whether it's asking the question, whether it's recognizing something, right? Oh, that's, I hadn't thought about Gumby and forever and a day. How
Right.
interesting. Do you remember the skit that Eddie Murphy did the first time on Saturday? What a wonderful door you've just opened. And how
Yeah.
did you do it? Just by being yourself.
Yeah.
And I know it's challenging because we've had a word kind of taken into a new context. And I think it's a word we need to take back. And I think we need to do it very quickly. Being weird is not a bad thing. We're
Yes.
all of us weird in wonderful ways. And I think this is an extraordinary opportunity for you to embrace that positive weirdness, right? Even if it's for the first time professionally for you, all kinds of wonderful ways. One of my favorite television shows as a boy was Doctor Who,
Ah,
right? The original, what is now the classic series. That lets you know how old I am, right? One of the actors who played the role, and this is after for those of you who are Doctor Who fans, right? You all have a doctor.
mm,
Tom Baker's mine. That's when I
mm,
started first watching the show. The actor who took on the role after Tom Baker, Peter Davison, his character would wear a stalk of celery in his lapel. I always thought that was the coolest thing in the world because nobody would think to do that.
right.
Those little things that you have sparked your imagination, whether it
Mm,
was from childhood, adolescence, adulthood, professionally, whatever it is, that inspirational quote that nobody else knows about,
mm,
that book you read that changed your life, that work of art that you love, that television show, right? That you remember, but you ask and nobody else does.
right.
Those are incredible opportunities for you to build rapport and open a door, right? And the minute you say, I'm hoping that our conversation is really an example of this for advisors. The minute you open the door, people start asking questions,
Right.
people start engaging. You could
Right.
hear there's an enthusiasm in their voice. If you're able to see them, if you're virtual or in person, you can see their body language change. If you're able to elicit those types of responses, you're doing something extraordinary in your marketing. And again,
Absolutely.
advisors know this because they're doing it every day with their clients.
Absolutely. Well, I agree. I think this, our conversation is a great example of this. I have shared with you and others, I don't know if I've shared publicly, but I recently moved my office into my bedroom in order to make space for our new arrival that is coming in 10 days or less, to turn it into a nursery. And, I had this thought. So for anyone who's just listening, just audio, I had this thought. I have some shelves behind me that I have some plants on that I like. And I have all my Harry Potter books back
Yeah.
here because it's my bedroom and, I'm a millennial and I love Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And I had this thought when I was moving in here, should I switch those out for, all my business books and things like that? And I thought,
Of course.
no, I'm not going to do that. I like how this looks.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep them. And
Yeah.
and I think that that's also just, it's kind of like Gumby and Pokey. It's just like,
Mhm.
you have little bits of your personality either in your
Yes.
background or in your content somewhere. And so I would love to ask you, Derek, because as we're having this conversation, I'm coming up with some examples of advisors that I know who
Mhm.
I think have done a really good job of this. And I'm wondering if anyone's coming to mind for you, any little things that stick out from advisors
Oh,
that you know who are doing this really well.
absolutely, yes. Aaron Buckner comes to mind
Mm,
immediately. And this brings up another wonderful and I think often missed opportunity for advisors, because I think that quite often the experience has been compliance is where creativity goes to die.
right.
Um, and what Aaron is doing, I think, provides such an extraordinary example of what collaborating with compliance can yield. So
Mm,
he has come up, and I think this was such a brilliant workaround. So he's named his firm Cactus, so that he's able to talk about prick-free financial advice. He's
right.
incorporated this into his tagline. So this is really at the core of his brand. It informs the title of the podcast he's just launched. He's speaking to younger prospects and clients, and he is doing it brilliantly.
Yeah.
And this would not have happened if he hadn't been bold enough to welcome compliance into the process and involve them. Now,
Right.
it would be wonderful if that was a seamless process and everyone was like, oh yeah, we're totally going to figure out how to do this. Often it takes some finessing to get there, but the team that he's working with has been incredibly supportive. And I'm absolutely blown away by the, it's kind of a strange way to think about it, the courage to
Mm,
pursue this idea, because he knew that's who he was. And
Yeah.
that's the advisor that he wanted to present to his ideal client. Somebody else who I think is doing a really, really good job, Brian Hune,
Mm.
with reflective wealth, really leaning into the reflection that's in the mindfulness that is at the
Mm.
heart. And again, really making sure that the definition of wealth that his clients and prospects have, it really is centered in well-being.
Mhm.
And I think that that's something also that gets lost, right? We don't often
Absolutely.
align money with that type of well-being, that type of
Right.
peace. But I again, I think advisors know this. I think they do spend a lot of time trying to talk about this in constructive ways with prospective clients. That's really what we're talking about, right? The
Right.
number's going to look different for everyone. But if your focus is on establishing financial independence as a part of your well-being,
Mm.
that's a very different situation. I think Brian's doing a very, very good job in terms of, again, the messaging, right? Not
Right.
just, hey, what a great name and cool logo, but really having those brand elements do so much work. There's no dissonance or friction. It's not
Mhm.
like, oh, reflective wealth, I'm going to think about money even more. It's
Right.
reflective wealth. Let's think about what money allows you to do in your life.
Mm.
Again, just a really, really wonderful example of how you can build a brand around your mission and convey that
Mhm.
very, very clearly and effectively in your logo, in your firm's name, in
Right.
the messaging that you're creating around that. So, yeah,
Oh, those are such great examples. I'm so glad I asked you that question. I have to share one of mine because
I was going to ask. Totally.
it reminds me a little bit of Cactus and Prick-Free Financial
Mm,
Advice. And it's Dave Armstrong of Monument Wealth, who I just had on the podcast a little bit ago. At the time that you and I are talking, I haven't released his episode yet, but his firm's tagline is unfiltered advice and straightforward opinions, and they're very
oh,
unfiltered. And so he's really leaned into that. That's the name of his newsletter is hashtag unfiltered, and
that's
they're not
great.
afraid of using four-letter words, in their marketing and on their podcast and things like that. And I think it just does such a great job of conveying, how straightforward and laid back they are
Yes.
and attracting other people who just want that with
Yeah.
their financial advice, right? They don't want someone in a suit who's going to try to just sell them
Yeah.
life insurance policies and talk down to them and use jargon that they don't understand, right?
Yeah.
And it's of course going to repel people who do want that more
Yeah.
buttoned up relationship. And so I just love seeing these examples of advisors really just being themselves in their
Yeah.
work and in their marketing. So
Well, what a phenomenal example, right? I'm so glad you brought that to the table. You also mentioned something that's very important, and this is one of those things we tend to run away from. Really effective marketing isn't just going to attract your ideal client. You've said this
mm,
so well, Hillary. It doesn't just attract your ideal client, it repels everyone else. So
right,
you are not wasting time and they are not wasting time. If
right.
they're not comfortable with somebody who's really familiar with some colorful language,
Yep.
then that's not, they're not the right firm.
Right,
He's not the right advisor for them. And
right,
that's very important to be able to signal to your prospective clients as well. As advisors, how valuable your time is.
right.
The same is true for your prospective clients. And so being able to be yourself, it's not just drawing in the people, it's not just engaging the people that you want to work with, it's also letting the people who are like, I don't think that's a good fit. It saves them from going through a discovery call that you both know at the start really isn't going to lead to working together.
Right.
And that is really important too. Now, that's not to say, hey, go out and alienate as many people as you can.
Right.
But
Right.
that point you've made is so, so important and valuable. That is part of what your marketing is doing, is
Mm,
you really are speaking to the people that you know you can help, and you're letting everyone else know, hey, there's probably an advisor who is going to be a better fit for you, right?
totally.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, such a great example.
Well, I appreciate that. I also think we've really entered this age of business. I know this is true for me. This is true for a lot of advisors that I've worked with who are starting their own firms. They're solo, in their practice, things like that. None of us want to work with clients that we don't enjoy being around, right? I know that I've had experiences working with clients that I didn't enjoy working with, right? And
Mhm.
so eventually the relationship parts ways. And I think when in your marketing, you can save yourself not only the time of the
Yeah.
discovery call, but also the time of even just starting a relationship with someone who isn't a good fit for you. If you can filter that out in your marketing so you don't have to worry about it, that's a big value that you're a big service that you're doing to yourself and your happiness.
Well, and also you've used another word that really is at the heart of all of the work that you and I do, and at the heart of the work all advisors do, and that is relationships,
Mm,
right? That is ultimately what you're building. If your marketing is working well, if you're being intentional, if it's really good, that's what it's doing. You're not having discovery calls so that somebody can learn about you at that point. You're having calls that are welcoming people into a business relationship with you.
right.
If you're really successful with your marketing, it's doing all the sales for you. People aren't like, oh, I want to learn a little more about this person. They already know you.
Right.
They already know who you are. They already know who they're going to meet. And I think this is a great litmus test for advisors. Is the profile photo you have, for example, on LinkedIn, the person I'm going to meet when we get together on that first call?
Mm,
And if it isn't, it's time to change that profile photo. And
right.
I can't tell you how many advisors I've met with where I have said to them, first comment, wow, this is the person I was looking forward to meeting.
Mm,
I don't see them anywhere. I don't see them on LinkedIn. I don't see them on the website. This is the relaxed person that I was really hoping I was going to get a chance to talk to. This is the person who knows their expertise, doesn't need to prove it, and really is just hanging out, learning more about me so that they can determine how best to help. If the person that your prospect sees on a call for the first time is not the person you are showing up as in your marketing, it is time to rethink your marketing because,
mm,
as you said, Hillary, what you're doing from the very, very start, whether it's a call, whether it's as part of your marketing collateral, part of your messaging, you're building relationships. And as advisors, there is nothing more important than that. Those are the people who you're going to continue to work with. It could be that those lead to multi-generational clients for you. Develop, cultivate, nurture those relationships, and be the person you are. Your marketing is just doing that out loud, right?
mm. That is so beautifully said, Derek. And so as we near the end of our conversation, I would love to ask you, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet or that I haven't asked you about yet that you think is really poignant? And if you don't know, I'm stealing this from your friend, Matt Haller. But I would love to just give you the opportunity to just
Yeah.
anything that we haven't covered yet or you want to circle back to.
Honestly, I think one of the parts of this that gets overlooked. So one of the frameworks that I've developed in terms of content creation, no surprise, my background, right? I'm not just an academic. I'm not just a marketer. I'm also a poet.
Mm,
I'm a creative writer. I've published a number of books. I serve as the acquisitions editor for a series that University of Michigan publishes. Um, I'm very, very honored to be part of those conversations. The framework I've developed, surprise, surprise, the acronym is POET,
ooh,
P-O-E-T. It's the first part of POET in this framework that I use in working with advisors, developing content, creating strategy for them. It's the P that gets lost, right? Now, many of you might be thinking, That's a pretty good innuendo to lead with. But what we're talking about here, right, joking aside, is play, organize, execute, and test.
Mm.
Most everyone rushes to organize so they can execute, so they can test, right?
Mm.
They forget about the play.
Yeah.
That's where all of the great ideas reside. That's where the next step in your journey is waiting for you. That's where that next big idea, that's where the ability to make that pivot, right? If you are working at a larger firm, but you just know there's going to come a point where you hang your own shingle.
Mm.
You're going to find it when you give yourself time to play. I think it's a lot easier for those of us who are parents, right? Because
Mm.
we're around that.
Right.
We see it happen, and
Right.
we're energized by it. And if it's been a minute, and I'm not suggesting if you are not a parent that's a closed door to you, um, just take yourself on a journey. Go back
Mm.
to that time in your own life when you had that sense of wonder, and that I mean, we talk about it as grown-ups, that fearlessness, right? You just asked the question because you wanted the answer. You weren't
Right.
afraid that you were going to look a certain way or people were going to think a certain thing about you. You wanted to know why the sky was blue, why the birds sang that way, right? Where that path led. And so you asked. The more often we engage in play, the more streamlined our operations become,
Mm.
the more focused we are in terms of the work we do, the greater our sense of purpose, the more empathy we bring, because we're paying attention to ourselves, to others in the world in which we live and work. So I want to encourage advisors, and again, even if it's behind closed doors, right, with the blinds drawn, play, put on
Mm.
a song and dance, do something that you haven't done in a while that energizes you, but
Mm.
make a point of just creating space in which there's no agenda, and the only thing is a sense of discovery. Probably not a bad idea to have a notebook around, or
Yeah.
a phone, or a journaling device, whatever you're comfortable using, because you're going to find there are a lot of ideas that are going to come to you, right?
Yeah.
And so play before you organize, execute, and test, and you're going to find that the "O.E.T" part of that, right, runs a lot more smoothly, and as you had said before, rewards you, fulfills you in ways that
Mm.
perhaps your work is not right now, and
Right.
perhaps gives you clarity about how to talk about these things in your marketing, how to create that messaging that's been eluding you. Play, right?
Mm. Derek, if you haven't trademarked this already, you need to. This is genius.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Well, it's one of those things. It came out of my playing.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that that's the part that gets lost, right? And that
Yeah.
those of us who are on the creative side of this, we're accustomed to doing a lot of stuff that looks like doing nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and really understanding the value of that, and the rewards, the deep work that's occurring when everyone else is like, dude, get to work.
Yeah.
We know that we've been doing that for quite some time,
Yeah.
even if it looks to most of the rest of the world like we're staring out a window, or we're just on
Right.
a walk out in the park.
Right.
There's a lot of deep work that takes place there. And the other thing too is, don't be afraid. Don't feel like, oh, I'm going to go play for 10 minutes, and at the end of it, I'm going to have all these brilliant ideas. It may just be that those brilliant ideas are just starting to circulate,
Right.
and then a week later, or a month later, or a year later, that thing that you've been teasing at suddenly comes into focus for you. So
Right.
be patient with the process too. Advisors know this, right? It's the same
Right.
advice they're giving to clients all the time. It is
Right.
a long-term strategy. That's
Right.
true of the very, very best and most effective marketing, to be patient, give yourself time to play, and those other aspects of that framework are just going to sing for you.
Yeah. Oh, you know what, Derek? it reminds me of this thing that I do in my creative process, and you've said it so much more positively and beautifully than I have, but I really allow myself, I intentionally write bad drafts of
Mhm.
things when I'm trying to write something, whether it's a website or it's a blog post or it's a social media post. I intentionally try to write it badly first,
Yeah.
because if I'm intentionally trying to write it badly, I'm freeing my brain to come up with ideas that I didn't know what I had. And that to me is a form of play, I think. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
love kind of reframing that as I'm playing here. I'm not writing
Yeah.
badly, right? I'm playing here. So I just really appreciate you uh, ending us off with that. I think that was a really great positive way to end. Now, Derek, if people want to find you, where's the best place that they can go to find you, or the best places, I should say?
Places, yeah. LinkedIn, of course. Please feel free to send me a connection request or DM. More than happy to talk to you. And this gets back to one of the questions you had asked earlier. So much of the work I do is really in the form of answering questions.
Mm,
So
mhm,
if advisors have questions in terms of their marketing, something specific, again, just an idea that they're teasing at, please don't hesitate to reach out via LinkedIn. You can reach me via email at derek@constellarcreative.com. And of course, you can always get in touch via the website at constellarcreative.com. All of this will be in the show notes. But please, everyone, I invite you. I would love to have a conversation and learn more about how you're doing what you're doing.
mm. Well, thank you so much, Derek. This has truly been such a delightful conversation, as all of our conversations have been. So, really appreciate you sharing some of your time with me today.
Oh, I feel the same, and I can't wait to do this again once we have an opportunity. Congratulations again. I am so thrilled. Can't wait to hear the good news once you've been able to welcome in the latest member of your family.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.